Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I thought we would have a look at some more stuff in the files, mainly because the dev server once again got updated. Now, I'm not going to call this a second dev server. I think this is mainly just the first dev server, just with a slight update. There was like a 1.5 gig update to it, so it seems like some things have been added again, and some things are wandering about. So the first thing that has now been sat in the files is the MI4V. Now, we have the MI4AV, which is this one. Obviously, it's the standard tech tree vehicle for the Soviets. It's the starter vehicle, actually. They actually changed it more recently, giving it ATGM, and it's the armed version of based on the MI4A. But the one that is interesting to look at is this vehicle here. This is the MI4V. So instead of the AV, just the V. Now, this is a Czechoslovakian version of the MI4. It should be pretty similar to the AV. My guess is it might be a little squadron vehicle or something like that, but you can see it's got this gun in the bottom, and when you have a look at the AV, which is this one, it's pretty much exactly the same. The only real difference is the armament pods that are on it, the MI4V only having the rockets, at least on this version. But pretty much what you're getting here is the Czechoslovakian MI4. Nothing too crazy, and also it's been seen before, so technically this one has been re-added compared to what we saw. There's also some interesting things regarding specific vehicles. So one of the things which is kind of an indicator on stuff, coming in the future is things such as indicators or gauges for stuff such as cockpits and things like that. So you have these gauges, which are set around the place, that you can have a look at. And what these are, they're all labeled as A6E gauges. So this is the enhanced braking one, this is the fuel meter for the A6E, then also the trim position for the A6E, and so on and so forth. So this could be the first indicator that we're going to have an A6E in the game. Now, if you don't know what the A6 is, basically the A6 is the Grumman A6 Intruder. This was a highly produced vehicle, an all-weather attack aircraft designed by Grumman, which was used predominantly by the Americans. The United States Navy and also the Marine Corps used this for many years. It was introduced in service in 1963 and was retired in the 1990s, which is very interesting. If you want kind of a quick comparison, I suppose, when it comes to comparing it to other places or other nations, the closest thing I would say is probably the Buccaneer, which may be not the best comparison, but it's close enough. The A6E variant of it is obviously a specific one, which was a A6A, but it had improved electronics in it. And the A6A was the first production variant of the A2F1. And the A2F1 was the first production variant with a fixed tailpipe. There was nearly 500 of them built, so they basically standardized the name. The vehicle itself had access to Pratt & Whitney J52 turbojet engines. This meant that it could go 1,000 kilometers an hour at sea level as its maximum speed, and it didn't have any internal guns. This thing was completely designed for, just throwing ordnance at places. So it had 5 hard points. It could carry nearly 4,000 pounds worth of ordnance, and it could carry pretty much anything you can think of. You've got the Shrike, you've got the AGM-78, the Walleye, the Maverick, the Harpoon, the Skipper, the Tald, even all of the different bombs that you can think of, and also even mines and rockets. This thing was really designed to be able to do a lot of damage, and very specifically for a certain role. So if we see the A6 in game, I think it will fill a very similar role to the Buccaneer, which I'm sure will be quite fun. Also, at the same time, there is some other additions that we talked about in a previous little thing. So you have the AIM-54A, which we had a chat about, and then also you have the AIM-54C, which is the other version which actually went into production, with the improved stuff in it, like the improved electronics. And We talked about this before, but there's also another missile which is kind of set around the place, and this is much more of an interesting one when we have a look at things, because it would actually bring a bunch of new mechanics to the game. Now, what is interesting about this specific one is it's actually in the ship section of the files. And you may know what this is by just looking at it. I'm sure many people do. But what this is named as is the AGM-78 standard. It's a missile. And what this is kind of a bit of an oddity when it comes to War Thunder. One of the mechanics that many have talked about is the idea of anti-radiation missiles and bringing them into game. Now, the way that an anti-radiation missile works, or an ARM as it's known, is it detects and homes in on enemy radio emission sources. So you basically fire it, and then it moves itself towards the enemy radar to strike it. So basically, the idea would be is that it would be used on aircraft in the SEED role, which is the suppression of enemy air defenses, and you would just basically go in, see the radar, bang, throw the missile, and then it would home in on it. Pretty effective in general when it comes to the conflicts that it's been used in. But what is interesting about this one is the fact that it's in the naval folder, and also it doesn't seem to have a ton of markings on it. So because of that fact, even though this is labeled as the AGM-78, what this actually might be is this might be the RIM-66. Now, the AGM-78, even though it was an anti-radiation missile, it was built off the airframe of the RIM-66. Now, that is a surface-to-air missile. And it was mainly used not just surface-to-air stuff with the United States Navy, it was also used in an anti-shipping role as well. So this thing could come to maybe some kind of ship in the future to be able to use. It's obviously something which was in service from the 60s, and it was very powerful at the time for the US Navy. But I think it's probably more standard that it's going to be coming in on an aircraft. It's just in the wrong place right now. And the reason for this is because the AGM-78 was used on the A6 that, we obviously have the cockpit parts for. So it was used on the A6B and E, it was used on the F-105, the G variant, and also the F-4G as well. So none of the vehicles that we have in the game, but we do have variants of the F-105, the D, and obviously a million variants of the F-4. So it could easily come in to a specified role and be pretty good at it. So you can see there's a few extra additions to the files, having a little bit of fun with it, and kind of having a look to see what may come in the future. I don't think we're done when it comes to dev server stuff, so we'll have to see what goes on in the future. But as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Mega Dino King, Professor X1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.